Who to promote?
Okay, we've got to decide who to promote to leading education officer.
Someone from the arts faculty, I suppose.
Well, it can be from any faculty, since the position requires more general skills. Handling personnel, settling disputes and motivating them to focus on the task. It was the last position which involved computer knowledge, not this one.
Surely computer knowledge would help. So too would knowledge in the arts.
Sure, it would help, but the key criterion is being able to direct the staff appropriately.
So it doesn't matter then from which faculty we select our candidates?
Not really, but I've already looked at those from computing and rejected them all.
Why?
They're all too new, lacking in sufficient experience, whereas these ones from the business faculty are long-timers, so we'll take someone from there.
I suppose you're right. The arts faculty doesn't present much in the way of suitable candidates either.
But we'll still have to train the person, teach the ropes, as they say, and he or she will have to expect to do overtime as needed.
Of course, it can get so busy that if we were open on the weekend, they'd have to work then as well.
Just as well we're a Monday to Friday university, right?
Right. But are you sure these people will actually want the job? The salary isn't such an improvement on their current ones.
I know, but there are benefits. You get overtime rates, a nice place to put your car, as well as additional petrol money if you drive for company purposes, which they'll probably be required to do.
But those benefits are quite limited, especially given all the work and responsibility involved. People often don't like that. They prefer the creative freedom of less senior teaching positions.
Yeah, I know. But these candidates should realise that if they do this job well, there'll be more promotions down the line. You know how everyone likes having their own office, right?
Sure.
Well, that would come after a few years, if they're prepared to work hard and grow with the university.
Yes, that should attract these people.
Well, that's enough talk about the job. What about the actual candidates? How many do we have?
I've narrowed it down to 4. Just using their first names, that's Stephen, Abdul, Lek and Oscar. As you said, there's quite a bit of experience between them, about 34 years in all.
What's the exact breakdown of figures?
Abdul and Stephen both have 7 years. Lek has 1 more, and Oscar is the most experienced at 12.
But who's the most qualified?
Stephen and Abdul have an MBA. Oh, sorry, Abdul's got something called a MBP, some foreign thing which translates as Master of Business Practice.
I'm not sure what that is, but does he do the job well?
Very well, apparently. Better than Lek and Oscar, who hold a degree and some certificates, respectively. But we have to think about any drawbacks. You know, possible issues with any of them. I asked the respective deans for feedback, and I found out that Stephen, the younger one, drinks a bit.
So he has a problem with alcohol?
No, he never drinks to excess, but at the bar he's often expressed his intention of moving on, of teaching abroad.
Ah, he's not stable.
Not stable at all, apparently. We'll never know for how long he'll hold the job.
We need stable personnel, and people without family problems or sick relatives like the last guy we promoted. What about Abdul, then? Will he do?
He might do, except his English language ability is limited. It's functional, but a bit broken, and meaning is sometimes lost. That's not the problem with the next candidate, Lek, who has good language ability, but this job involves handling people, and his dean says Lek's attitude is bad.
In what way?
His manners are okay, and he's interested in his job, but he believes there should always be adequate leisure in life. He definitely won't work overtime and complains a lot already about his job. But this last candidate, Oscar, is probably not the right one either.
Why not? Not another problem with language.
His first language isn't English, but he speaks it well enough. He's stable with a good attitude, but his age is the problem.
Age is not a problem. That would be ageism, and I don't believe in that.
But with his age comes health problems as well, and serious ones at that.
Oh, that might be an issue then.
Lecture listening note-taking strategies.
Hi, Emily. What did you think of that lecture?
A bit hard to follow, but I have some good lecture listening note-taking strategies which really help, so I can review the lecturer's message later.
Lecture listening note-taking strategies? Review it later? That sounds interesting. I must admit, I struggle a bit to take down the gist of what I hear. Look at my notes.
Well, I can see a basic problem immediately. You're writing full words, such as century, when all you need is a C. And don't write increase, just draw an up arrow. And why write thousand when a TH will do?
I see. Just use symbols. That's not a bad idea at all.
It's the most basic strategy, allowing you to record information at a faster pace. These lecturers can talk faster than others too, so you don't want to waste any time. But you need to be very familiar with your set of symbols.
Why?
Because you'll have to look at these notes days, weeks, or even months afterwards when you begin writing your essay. So you'll need to be able to interpret them at a later stage.
I think I can do this, even by looking at your notes. Imed must mean immediately.
But regarding the lecture as a whole, I knew the professor would be giving a set of specific recommendations and comparing two alternative approaches, so I formatted my page in advance, adding the features consistent with the nature of what I was going to hear.
I think I need an example of what you mean.
Well, look at my page. Before the lecture, I drew large headings saying recommendations. You should always draw these, and I drew a table saying approach 1 and approach 2. At the end, I drew a flowchart, as obviously the final recommendation would be a step-by-step approach. Then I was prepared in advance to simply fill in the spaces.
Wow! Now that's clever. Your advice about note-taking sounds great, but I still have one question, Emily. How are you able to design your page in advance? I mean, how can you predict the nature of the talk and know which design is likely to work best?
It's rather obvious when you think about it. What's your next lecture about?
Legal studies.
Well, that suggests to me that you'll need a flowchart, since the judicial system has a very logical, do this first, do that second approach, which must be followed in that order. You know, all the processes that happen in the courtroom and the procedures that must take place to ensure complete legality.
Sure, that's the way law is, very linear and orderly. But what about culture studies? That's just a mass of comparisons of different cultures.
Which tells you that you'll need a table where, in tabular form, you can efficiently write down information.
But often the lecture's not that simple. The professor throws in a really complex mix of ideas.
Then use a spider graph, like the web a spider makes, where there's a central idea around which you attach all the associated thoughts and ideas and impressions.
I see. I think I understand. And that would be very quick too, very efficient. I like that. But what about management theory? How would you approach that?
The same as with culture studies. I'd use a network, which is basically the same as a spider graph, linking thoughts, although this time there are directions involved. It is this element that makes it different, the fact that the thoughts go one way and not the other.
Okay, has directions. It sounds logical. And what about the other subjects, such as political science? There's no predictable order to that.
Well, for that I just put my notes in a line, that is, in linear or straight line fashion, and these notes would use symbols, of course, to save time.
Okay, that just leaves mass media.
For that, I wouldn't have any special design at all. As you say, sometimes it's impossible to predict in what way lecturers will present their information, in which case the best you can do is pre-write headings, but not specific, just general, as in main 1, main 2, sub 1, 2 and 3, and so on.
Okay.
But always be prepared to adapt to the nature of the talk, using any one of the other methods if it becomes appropriate at the time.
Course discussion.
Well, gentlemen, we've almost finished our second semester at this university. What do you think of all the courses we attend?
On the whole, I'd say they're quite good, apart from social history, which I find to be a little too inexact.
Yes, the lecturer's style is also very, very dull.
I certainly agree with you there, although I would say that the textbook is more interesting. Welfare State. The subtitle says, An Examination of Social Development in the 20th Century.
Yes, Welfare State is a good book, but look how many pages it has. 458!
I agree. It's just too long to be easily read. Far too long, although it's certainly well written in parts.
Yes, and if you compare it to the textbook for cultural studies, what's it called?
Inner Views, I think.
No, that's the book for media studies, and we finished that subject last semester. The book you're thinking of is In Perspective.
Oh, sorry, you're right. In Perspective. And the subtitle says, A Comparison of Social Groups. Somewhat interesting, wouldn't you say?
Well, mildly so, as is the subject, dealing as it does with such a wide variety of issues. But the book itself certainly oversimplifies a very complex subject.
I agree. I also got annoyed at its constant oversimplification. Life is more complicated than what it suggests.
Yes, but what you call oversimplifying may well be considered clarifying. Look at this other textbook, Government in Action. Some may say that it also oversimplifies, but it must do so in order to present a coherent picture of an equally complex subject.
Government in Action. Which subject?
It's the textbook for political theory.
Oh, I hate politics. That's why I don't like the active leadership subject either. And most of the stuff in that political theory textbook is based on the American system. You see, it's written by Americans, so it's not even relevant to us here.
I'd agree with you there. It's not relevant to us at all, since our government uses the Westminster system.
Yes, I suppose that is a problem. Well, it seems we all have certain criticisms about the textbooks we're using, but at the same time we all like some elements, at least, of the subjects we're studying. What's your favourite subject, David?
I'm not sure. I like political theory, but...
Cultural studies is by far the best, even better than political theory, which I also like, but just not as much.
Why do you say that, Steve? I was thinking perhaps social history is worth considering as best.
Social history is good, but I made my choice because the subject is relevant to this modern society.
But so is social history, and I like the historical element, which the other subjects lack. Even political theory examines history only briefly and in a very narrow way, so I'd say social history is the most rewarding for me. What about you, Susan?
I think social history is certainly very good, but political theory is, in fact, the best, since basically every human system boils down to politics. So, despite a certain irrelevancy in the details, the basic message remains as relevant as ever.
Oh, Susan, you can't be serious. Let's ask Olive again. She's over there. Olive! Which subject do you think is the best?
Ah, a difficult question. I'm very interested in culture, so cultural studies is certainly my cup of tea. But I'm politically active also, and hope to pursue this as a career. So political theory would be the one I'd pick.
I don't believe it. Even with that irrelevant textbook?
Don't listen to him, Olive. You have a right to your own opinion.
New flatmate.
Hi, Richard. I'm glad I caught you here. Can I just talk to you about something? Our new flatmate, Anders, is not quite what I had hoped. I was wondering if you shared my concerns about some of his behaviour.
Yes, Tom, I know what you mean, but we can't be entirely negative. He has good points. I mean, at least he's quiet. He doesn't play loud music all night or bother others or turn his TV up, disturbing everyone.
Sure, he's quiet, but remember our last flatmate? He'd say hi to you and smile and treat everyone politely. In comparison, this new guy is very impolite. He just grunts in reply and sometimes ignores me altogether.
I guess that's just his way. You know, just his character. I don't think he realises he's being impolite, and it shouldn't matter to us too much. We can just ignore him too and quietly live our own lives.
But his friends are hard to ignore when they visit.
I know what you mean, but how often does that happen? I rarely see them, maybe once or twice a month. If they came more often, it might be a problem. But as it is, such rare visits don't matter so much. Wouldn't you say so?
Well, I'm not sure, since it's very obvious when they're here because of all the cigarette smoke in the house. It stinks up the place, and you know we don't allow smoking on the premises.
Well, I've never seen them doing this. Maybe they do it outside. Perhaps we can talk to Anders about it. Always remember, though, in one respect, he's a good tenant, and it's the most important aspect. The previous flatmate would always pay the rent late.
I know what you're going to say. This guy pays promptly. But there's more to being a good tenant than prompt payment. I mean, you need to turn off the TV, clean up your dishes, dress respectably, be polite, and so on. I guess what I'm saying is that basically you need to cooperate with the others, and this new guy fails significantly in this respect.
Okay, I suppose you have a point there. I tell you what, Tom, why don't we talk to our new flatmate, Anders, about these issues? If we throw him out, we'll have to go to all the trouble of finding another flatmate, who might not necessarily be much better. So, let's give the current guy a chance. Here, I've got a piece of paper, so let's make a short list of issues to discuss with him. Get it out into the open.
Sure, we'll give him one more chance. So, write communication. And let's tell him to...
Well, we can't change a person's personality overnight. So why don't we have a weekly tenants meeting and we can just ask him to attend. That way we can get to know him better. I'll write attend meeting and we can take it from there.
OK, but we have to tell him about his friends. They can't just do whatever they want. Write a heading friends and then write don't smoke anywhere, inside or outside.
Well, instead of being so direct and possibly causing offence, I'll just write follow rules and verbally mention the rules. TV off by 10 p.m, no loud music or bad behaviour, including smoking.
OK, do that, but I still think we need to specifically mention that last issue. You know how I can't stand the habit. So I'd like this to be another and separate point. Cigarettes, strictly forbidden. And it's important to include the strictly here. We can't pussyfoot around too much. Sometimes directness is necessary.
OK, I'll write that. Forbidden. OK. And what about cleaning duties? Anders is a little too relaxed about that. Dishes are sometimes not washed, dirty teacups are left around the place, and so on.
So, write, must do better.
Yeah, again, Tom, he might take that personally, and it could cause a scene. I'd rather be general. I'll write must be done, and I'll tell him that that's for everyone, not just him. OK?
OK, as long as he gets the message.
Research on university waste.
Hi, Nicole. As you know, we've got to decide on the best ways this university can reduce its waste. You inspected the eastern campus, and I did the western buildings. Did you do all the interviews as well?
Yes, I interviewed all the staff, who made some good observations, and I interviewed some of the students. The students said little that was interesting. They don't seem to care that much. It was the cleaners, surprisingly, who revealed the most relevant facts.
That's not surprising to me. They empty all the bins, so they see the waste firsthand, whereas the staff just throw things away without thinking. What item was most commonly disposed of?
Well, it really depended on where I interviewed. In the cafeteria precinct, obviously paper plates and cups were thrown away all over the place. There was almost no attempt at recycling. However, across the university in general, it was paper copying that filled up most bins, far more than plastic or other forms of waste.
Do people care about this, then?
Well, some do, if you can believe them. I must have interviewed about 30% of customers in the cafeteria, and the results were mixed. Out of all the people I interviewed, well over half, maybe about 55% of them, were quite honest about it, telling me that they had little concern. The other fraction, 45%, were more troubled.
Yes, but do they do anything about it?
Surprisingly, quite a significant percentage do something, even if they aren't particularly concerned. I mean, small things, About 10% bring their own cups to the cafeteria, for example, and at least 1/3 said they use recycling bins. So, in total, it's an equal split between those who do something or those who don't.
So why do so many people remain inactive, particularly over an issue they should care about more?
I think they do care, and many of them are prepared to do something. Obviously, there's an element of laziness, but I'd say that it's relatively small. If they knew what to do, and if stringent systems existed, or if the importance of this was made clearer to them, I'm sure you'd see a much larger percentage of people actively working towards helping our environment.
Well, there's cause for optimism at least. Clearly then, there's a significant waste of paper here at this university, so I've worked out one practical suggestion which could help reduce it, specifically the waste from the excess photocopying.
Let me hear it then.
Obviously, for a start, we've got to ensure that people, including the staff, without exception, copy both sides of a page. We can't tolerate single-sided copying. It's just far too wasteful.
Absolutely. Just more trees being chopped down.
But as people are doing copying, there may be adjustments and practice copying, producing single-sided copies or blank pages not wanted and not intended for use. These need to be deposited into a tray for intended recycling. You know, for recopying onto the blank side of the page.
But people don't usually do that. I'm afraid it's just human nature. No matter how unimportant the copying is, they'd prefer to use fresh paper.
Yeah, I agree with you, which is why you need to display these papers right in front of everyone with a clear sign, "Please reuse," to make it easy for them to do so.
They still won't do it.
I know. That's why you take some of these papers and regularly stack them inside the copier in a special tray once a day, say in the morning.
Well, that's getting better, making it easier for them to use the paper. But still, I'm afraid many won't.
That's why you allow everyone to select this tray when copying. You distribute numbers or codes to every person, giving them special access to this recycling tray. Every time they use papers from this, it's tallied up to their account.
I know I'm sounding a bit negative, or even cynical here, but why should they bother using that tray?
Because the person who does the most copying from this recycling tray gets, say, a cinema pass or lottery ticket or some other sort of reward.
Oh, right. Now that's a system which might just work. Let's trial it in the office and see what happens.